My mother-in-law calls me a parasite because I work from home, but now she's angry because I'm moving out with my daughter and no one told her anything. My mother-in-law called me a parasite because I work from home, so I decided to move out with my daughter. Now she's furious because I'm selling the house and keeps bombarding my phone, thinking the house belonged to her son. So I, Kaylee, have been dealing with serious tension with my mother-in-law, Fate, for what feels like an eternity. I need to vent because she's driving me crazy. Let me start from the beginning to give you some context. My husband is in the military, so most of the time it's just my daughter, Ela, and me. I'm super proud of my husband, but being alone all the time can be tough. When the pandemic hit, everything turned upside down. Like many others, I lost my job and ended up unemployed for a long time. I wasn't making any money, and I guess that didn't sit well with Fate. A lot of people were struggling during that time, and I was doing my best to stay afloat. I tried small things to earn money, like babysitting and selling things online, but it was still tough. Not being able to contribute financially really made me feel bad, and I could tell Fate didn't have a good opinion of me because of it. She used to make comments like, "When are you going back to work?" or, "Ela is growing up, don't you think it's time you got a job?" She made me feel like I was just sitting around, doing nothing for the family. What she didn't understand was that I was doing everything I could to make sure Ela was well taken care of while my husband was away. I was doing everything in my power to keep our home running smoothly, even without a paycheck. Anyway, I eventually found a work-from-home job that has been a total game changer for me. Finally, I'm contributing financially again, and I feel like I'm making a difference. But the problem is, Fate still doesn't seem to believe I'm working enough. She has this idea that I just sit at home doing nothing and live off my husband's money. She even called me a gold digger once, which was completely out of line. I made it very clear to her that she couldn't say things like that to me. I don't know why, but she's always had a problem with me. She's always made me feel like I'm not good enough for her son, and that my main goal in life is to take advantage of him. I have never done that, ever, but she refuses to see it, and it's honestly exhausting. The funny thing is, she's actually really nice to other people. For example, when we're around other family members or friends, she's sweet and welcoming. But the moment we're alone, it's like her evil side comes out. She makes passive-aggressive comments about my lifestyle or how I spend my time at home. I always respond because I don't like what she says, but it never seems to matter. Nothing I do is ever good enough for her. When my husband is around, Fate is all smiles. She's super nice and acts like everything is fine. But as soon as he's gone, it's like her mask falls off, and she becomes this critical, judgmental version of herself that I just can't stand. I've tried talking to my husband about it, but he downplays it. He says his mom is just old-fashioned and doesn't understand that work-from-home jobs exist now. But that doesn't make it any easier to deal with. We used to live in the same city as Fate, and our house was close to hers, about 10 minutes away at most. Fate used to show up at our house unannounced all the time, and when I say show up, I mean she would literally come over at any hour of the day, even when she knew we were busy. It wasn't like, "Hey, I'm just stopping by to visit." No, it was more like, "I'm coming to inspect your life and make sure you're living it the way I think you should." I swear, sometimes it felt like she was my personal life coach, but not in a good way. It got so annoying that I started dreading the sound of the doorbell. I knew it was her. It got to the point where I would lock the door and pretend we weren't home, or just act like I didn't hear her knocking. I hated behaving that way, but honestly, it was the only way to keep my sanity. What really hurts, though, is that Fate has always had this idea in her head that I married my husband just for the benefits of being a military wife. Yeah, you heard that right. She thinks I married him for the paycheck and the military perks. She makes comments like, "I hope you're enjoying all the benefits of being a military wife," or, "It's nice to have a husband who can take care of you like that." And I'm just thinking, are you serious? It's so frustrating. I didn't marry him for the money. I married him because I love him. Needless to say, a military salary isn't exactly luxurious. And if I were going to marry someone for money, I should have picked a lawyer or a doctor. She crossed the line at my daughter's birthday. My daughter had just turned 6, and I wanted to do something special for her birthday. I decided to throw a small backyard party, a simple gathering with her close friends, some family, and a couple of my trusted friends. We had decorations, snacks, games, and of course cake. Nothing over the top, but it was exactly what she wanted to make her happy. Ela was excited, and I was determined to make it a great day for her. Fate was already in a bad mood when she arrived. That's why things quickly spiraled out of control, and I still can't believe what happened. I was chatting with some of the other moms at the party, making sure everyone was having a good time, when my friend, the mother of Ela's best friend, pulled me aside. She looked upset and told me she overheard Fate talking with a couple of guests in a corner of the yard. I didn't know what to expect, but then she said, Kaylee, your mother-in-law just called you a parasite and said your work-from-home job is a joke. She's telling people you just sit at home and spend your husband's money. I was furious, but the problem was, I didn't want to ruin my daughter's birthday. Ela was having so much fun with her friends, and I didn't want to cause a scene or make the day about me and my issues with fate. So, as angry and hurt as I was, I kept quiet. I just took a deep breath and tried to stay calm. After everything that happened at my daughter's birthday and the ongoing drama with my mother-in-law, I decided I'd had enough of all the stress and negativity. I'd been thinking about it for a while, but that situation with fate really pushed me to make a decision I knew would change things forever. I needed to take control of my life again. For a while now, I'd been looking for a new job. As much as I liked working from home, I felt like I wasn't getting the kind of career growth or opportunities I needed. I didn't want to be stuck in a job that didn't challenge me or help me move forward. Additionally, all the tension with my mother-in-law wasn't making things any easier, especially since she constantly judged me for working from home. I wanted to prove to myself and to her that I could handle a real career and do more than what she thought I was doing. So, I started applying for jobs outside my comfort zone, looking for opportunities that would push me to grow, until I finally got one. It wasn't easy, but I received a job offer from a company that seemed like the perfect fit for my skills and career goals. The position was a step forward in my professional life, and it was exactly what I needed. There was just one small detail. The job was about 2 hours away from where I currently live, and I would have to move if I wanted to accept it. At first, I didn't think much about the distance. I just focused on the fact that I had found a job that could be a real turning point in my career. But then reality hit me. This meant I would be living about 2 hours away from Fate's house. I couldn't believe it. It was a sign from the universe to improve my life in multiple ways. But there was also the practical issue of how I would handle the move, especially considering that my husband is away in the military and it would just be my daughter and me. Commuting that distance every day wasn't even a realistic option. I would spend so much time in the car that it would take away from everything else in my life. After a lot of thought and weighing my options, I made the decision that felt right for me. I was going to sell our current house and move closer to my new job. I told my husband about the job offer, and I could tell he was a bit surprised, but he was also supportive. He knew this was something I had been hoping for, though I also saw the concern in his eyes. He was worried about the logistics of it all. It wasn't an easy conversation, but we both knew this was a step I needed to take for myself. I contacted the company and accepted the job offer. So, my life is changing a lot right now. And yes, I had to make some big changes, but sometimes making big changes is the only way to break free from a toxic situation. I wanted to build a better life for my daughter, for myself, and for our little family. And this job was the key to making that happen. After accepting the idea of moving for my job, I decided to sell my house and move to a completely new place. Now, to be honest, this was a bit of a strategic move, and maybe a little sneaky on my part. I didn't exactly tell Faith that I was planning to sell my house. I didn't want to hear it from her because I knew she would have a lot to say about it. So, I went ahead with selling the house and moving to my new place. And I didn't want to tell her until the deal was done and I was already ready to move. Even though I technically didn't tell her, she found out. To be clear, I didn't completely cut off communication with her. Fate visited us a few more times before discovering what was happening, but every time she planned to come over, I made sure there was no sign that the house was for sale. For example, the realtor didn't put up a "for sale" sign in the front yard, and luckily, Fate never visited during an open house or a home tour. For a while, things went smoothly. Fate had no idea, and I could enjoy the relief of not having to explain every decision I made. But of course, something like this can't stay a secret for long. Last weekend, Fate showed up at my house unannounced, and as usual, she walked in like she owned the place. She didn't even knock on the door or send me a message beforehand. Unfortunately, I had left some brochures about the home sale on the table. Fate saw them, and her face went from relaxed to completely confused. She stopped in her tracks, looked at me and asked, "What does this mean?" At that moment, I realized the secret was out. There was no turning back. So, I told her the truth. I was selling the house and moving. Of course, she didn't take it well. She immediately started yelling at me, saying I had no right to sell the house without talking to my husband first. She kept going on, saying this was a decision that needed both of our signatures. But here's the thing. This house was in my name. I didn't need my husband's approval to sell it. I tried to explain it to her calmly, but of course, it didn't help at all. She was beyond furious. She kept yelling, saying I was disrespecting my husband by making such an important decision on my own. I stayed outwardly calm, but inside, I was furious. After a lot of shouting between us, she finally stormed out of my house in a rage. That should have been the end of it, but of course it wasn't. Fate has been blowing up my phone ever since that day. She has been calling and messaging non-stop, leaving me angry voicemails, and I'm just ignoring them. I know it's probably not the healthiest approach, but I'm so done with the drama. I'm tired of her trying to control everything and of constantly having to defend my decisions to her. After everything that happened with Fate, I had a conversation with my husband. I didn't want to hide anything from him, so I told him exactly what happened and why I didn't tell Fate about selling the house. To be honest, I thought he would support me, but his response was different from what I expected. He said I should have told Fate the truth earlier. He argued that I should have at least been honest with her from the beginning, even if she was going to be upset. He said keeping her in the dark about something this big would only make things worse in the long run. Honestly, his response left me a little shaken. I didn't think I had done anything wrong, but the more I thought about it, the more I started to wonder if maybe he was right. Maybe I should have been more upfront with Fate, even though I knew it would cause drama. Now I'm sitting here wondering if I made a huge mistake. Did I go too far by not telling Fate about the sale sooner? Did I really handle this the wrong way? I know I've been dealing with a lot of stress because of her, and maybe I just wanted to avoid more conflict. But I also feel like I have the right to make my own decisions without constantly being told what to do. Still, hearing my husband say that I should have been more open with his mom has left me feeling a little unsure. So Reddit, I need your advice. Did I do the right thing or am I the asshole? Update 1. Things keep getting more complicated with Fate, and I really need to vent. I'm still dealing with the aftermath of selling my house, and just when I think things can't get any worse, she finds a way to outdo herself. I thought I had already dealt with her craziness, but she keeps finding new ways to make my life difficult. Fate showed up and caused a huge scene during the open house I had organized. I had scheduled the event, prepared everything, candles lit, the house spotless and looking its best. I even baked cookies for potential buyers. I wasn't expecting a huge crowd, but I did anticipate a few serious buyers. Everything was going pretty well until Fate showed up, of course uninvited. Remember, Fate and I haven't been on the best of terms lately, so when she arrived at the event, I honestly had no idea what to expect. I thought maybe she'd take a look around and stir up some drama, but I wasn't prepared for what she did next. She started making loud comments about how the house wasn't what it used to be, and how my decision to leave my husband's house and take Ela was a huge mistake. She was saying all of this in front of potential buyers, and I could see the confusion on their faces. Some even started murmuring among themselves, probably wondering if the house was cursed or something. Then, Fate turned to the buyers, introduced herself as Ela's grandmother, and started making a scene about how I was stealing Ela away from her family. She went on about how I had no right to take Ela away from her grandmother, and that they'd never see each other again because I was moving so far away. She even tried emotionally manipulating Ela, saying, "You'll never see your grandma again if you leave with your mom." Ela, who's only 6 years old, was completely confused and started feeling uncomfortable. She didn't understand what was happening, but she could sense the tension in the air. At that moment, I knew I had to step in. I wasn't going to let Fate use my daughter like that to manipulate the situation. I told Fate, right in front of everyone, that even if this house didn't sell, she and I were leaving. We had already signed a lease for a small apartment in the new city, and I was moving on with my life. I made it clear that this wasn't about her or anyone else. It was about what was best for me and Ela. At that point, Fate was furious. She started yelling at me, calling me selfish, and saying I was taking her granddaughter away from her. She was so angry and loud that, honestly, I thought she might throw something at me, but I didn't stay silent. I very clearly told her she had to leave, and after more shouting, she finally stormed out of the house. But not without one final threat. "You'll regret this. You've lost me and your family. You'll never be happy without us." I don't even know what to think about that. I don't know if she actually believes what she's saying or if she's just trying to guilt trip me. Either way, I don't regret what I did. As for the open house, well, it didn't go as planned. The buyers who were still there after the scene didn't seem very interested. Honestly, I don't know how I'm going to find a buyer for this house now. I'm sure the whole situation scared them off, and I feel like I'm back at square one. But you know what? I can't control what Fate does or says. I can't keep living in fear that she'll try to control every aspect of my life. It's been a tough few days since that event, and I'm still getting the occasional message from Fate, calling me all sorts of things and telling me I've made a huge mistake. My husband isn't exactly on my side either. He thinks I should have handled it differently, but honestly, I don't know what else I could have done. I gave her the chance to back off, but she kept pushing. Update 2. Reddit, I need to vent. Things with Fate just keep getting worse, and I don't know how much more I can take. I was at home the other day, working on things for my new job. when I got a call from Hila's school. That was already unusual because the school never calls me unless there's a problem. They told me that Fate had picked up Hila from school, and I nearly had a heart attack. They said that Fate had told them she was there to pick up Hila early, and they didn't question it. But of course, I had no idea this was happening. My first reaction was pure panic. I immediately tried calling Fate, but she didn't answer. Her phone kept going straight to voicemail. My heart started racing because I couldn't understand why she would do this without telling me, especially after everything that has been happening between us. I ended up grabbing my keys and rushing over to Fate's house. I knocked on the door, but no one answered. I called her again and again, feeling more and more frantic. I had no idea where Hila was, and Fate's phone just wouldn't ring. At this point, I was thinking the worst. Honestly, it had been almost an hour since I found out, and I was in full panic mode. I started calling my husband, but of course, he didn't answer either. He was busy with work. I was completely alone and terrified. So I did the only thing left to do. I called the police. 3 hours passed. Yes, 3 hours. They felt like the longest 3 hours of my life. Finally, Fate and Hila walked into the house like nothing had happened. I swear it took everything in me not to completely explode. Hila was holding a shopping bag and looked confused because there were police officers in the house and a patrol car parked outside. I immediately asked Fate what the hell was going on. She, as calmly as ever, said, "Oh, I just took Hila shopping. I wanted to spend as much time as I could with my granddaughter before you move." And that was it. That was her excuse. She didn't even seem sorry. She just acted like it was no big deal to take my daughter without telling me. I was furious. I don't know how else to explain it. My blood was boiling, and if the police hadn't been there, I probably would have smashed something over my mother-in-law's head. To make things even worse, she asked what the police were doing there, and I told her they were looking for my daughter and her because she had taken her from school without my permission. Then an officer said that Fate needed to come with them to the station to give a statement. Fate asked if she could follow them in her car, but the officer told her that wouldn't be necessary and that they would take her instead. They didn't handcuff her, but they did put her in the back of the patrol car. I told my husband everything that had happened, and to my surprise, this time, he agreed with me. He said, "We definitely need to set some boundaries with her. This is getting out of control." I thought he'd be mad that I called the police, but it was the opposite. He was finally on my side. I had been waiting for him to really stand up to Fate, and this time he did. He called her after things had calmed down and told her that from now on, she wasn't allowed to visit me unless he was there and she asked first. As for her arrest, she only got a warning, but I hope that's enough to keep her away, if what her son told her isn't enough. At this point, she is banned from entering the house I'm selling, and I'm willing to call the police if she shows up. I know some people might think I'm overreacting, but I can't let Fate have that kind of control over my family. I need to know that I can trust the people around me to respect my decisions, especially when it comes to my daughter. Update 3. Hey Reddit, I wanted to give you a little update. First of all, I finally moved. It was a big step, but being in another city far away from Fate is the best thing that could have happened. I still haven't sold my old house. There have been some offers, so I hope one of them goes through. I'm not in a rush, and I don't want to sell the house for less than it's worth, but it would be nice to get it over with so I can leave everything behind. I'm still looking for a permanent home, but I'm taking my time. I don't want to rush into anything. I want to make sure the place I choose is perfect for Hila and me, a place where we both feel comfortable. For now, we've rented a short-term apartment while I look for something more permanent. As for Fate, well, nothing has changed there. She still isn't allowed to talk to me or Hila. I've been very clear about that. I've also made it very clear that I'm not going to tell her where we live. She's been texting me, but I just ignore the messages. I don't even open them because I don't need that stress in my life. If she can't respect me and my boundaries, then I don't owe her anything, not even my new address. As for my husband, he's still overseas and won't be back for a few months. It would be nice to have him here, but he wasn't really needed for the move and all the changes we've been through. I'll probably wait for him to come back before choosing a new house, but I'll also be looking at what's on the market so I'm prepared. Hila has also started school here, and I've given strict instructions that only my husband and I can pick her up, something the previous school failed to enforce. Even though I hadn't explicitly left instructions that no one else could pick up Ella, they still shouldn't have allowed it. At least before I left, I filed a complaint with the school district. I don't have much faith that it will do anything, but I hope someone takes action and prevents this from happening to another child. Update 4. After months of searching for a house, Hila and I finally have a place to call home. There's still a lot of decorating to do and a lot of things to buy, but at least it's our house. And yes, I'm talking about just the two of us because my husband won't be living with us. We're getting divorced. Yes, a lot has happened in these months, and I'll try to summarize as much as possible. I thought my husband and I were on the same page about Fate. When I told him about her attempted kidnapping and that I had called the police, he seemed genuinely on my side. He even talked to her, and Fate stopped bothering us while we were still in the old house. But then he came back from his deployment, and everything started to change. He started talking to his mother more, which I didn't mind, but I did mind that he told her where we lived. I had made it clear that I didn't want her visiting us, at least not for a while, but he started saying that Fate just wanted to see her granddaughter. The result? One day, she showed up at my door. My husband was home, but one of the conditions was that Fate should at least call before showing up. Well, she had called, but my husband didn't tell me about it. I told her I wasn't going to let her see Hila and that she needed to leave immediately. My husband went out with her and took her to lunch, which was fine, as long as she wasn't near my daughter. However, my husband also told her what school Hila was going to, so Fate tried the same thing again. I don't blame my mother-in-law. If the first time she only got a warning, there was no real risk for her in trying again, especially when her son was so lenient with her. Luckily, the new school did call me when she tried to take Hila, and they didn't allow it. This happened an hour before I was supposed to pick her up at the end of the school day. Either way, I rushed to the school and took Hila with me because I was terrified of what Fate might try. After that, I filed for divorce. My husband had gone back to work, so it's not like we had time to sit down and discuss it. Although, at this point, I think there's nothing left to discuss with him. Among other things, I've requested a restraining order against Fate, so she can't go near Hila. I hope that will be enough when my husband comes back and has his time with our daughter. We've also added a clause in the custody agreement stating that Hila cannot be around her grandmother. If my future ex-husband violates this, he'll be breaking both the agreement and the restraining order, which, in this state, is a pretty serious offense. Not only could he lose custody entirely, but he could also end up in jail. And I suppose he could have problems with his job as well. I hope it doesn't come to that and that we can divorce amicably. I don't want to come back here to tell you what my husband has done. Otherwise, I truly hope, really, I wish, that this is my last post, and that this is our goodbye. I wish you all the best, except for the hateful commenters. To them, I wish a visit from Fate while they sleep.